Asking good questions every week helps you avoid investment pitfalls. Some people are asking about Trump banning institutions from flipping houses, referencing the housing is for living, not for speculation concept, and wondering if this will crush housing prices in 2026. Others are asking, given this year's economic trends, what kind of properties you should absolutely avoid buying. Then there are those who want to move their real estate capital into AI and want to know how to quickly understand this industry of the future. If you don't have much in savings, how can you invest more safely? And finally, there is the anxiety of parents, with talk of computer science graduates facing unemployment. How should children choose their college majors? We will start with these 5 practical questions from this week to explore the risks and opportunities in investment, wealth management, and life choices. First, thank you for liking the program. It is my biggest motivation for updating. Trump has said he won't let large investment institutions sweep up single-family homes anymore, effectively applying a housing is for living, not speculation policy to the US. Will this bring down housing prices this year? Let me give you the conclusion first. Trump's targeting of large institutions is not quite the same thing as the housing is for living policy that many viewers might be imagining. Trump's policy will likely have almost no major impact on overall US housing prices. Why? I look at this problem in 3 layers. First, Americans are indeed collectively angry about housing prices. But emotions aside, we have to look at the real market data. The large investment institutions Trump is defining, the kind that sweep up homes in bulk, only account for about 1% of the total single-family home market in the US. Expecting a 1% share to shake the entire US housing market is virtually impossible. Expecting this policy to cause a crash in 2026 is simply unrealistic. The proportion is just too small. Let's look at the second layer of analysis. That 1% is a national average, but it doesn't mean every city is the same. Institutional flipping is highly concentrated in some areas and scarce in others. So, where has the flipping been the worst and most rampant over the past few years? Longtime viewers know this. The core tech hubs in Texas, the west coast of Florida, Atlanta, and Arizona. If Trump's policy actually lands firmly in these regions and big institutions start dumping properties, those local prices might feel pressure. But that is a local phenomenon, not a structural adjustment of the entire US market. Finally, the third layer. Some viewers have asked, Trump is throwing out this ban on institutional flipping right now, and it's a crowd pleaser, but is he really trying to solve the housing problem? Or is there an ulterior motive? With the 2026 midterms approaching, this looks like an election posture, standing on the side of the voters and directing anger toward big capital. My understanding is this. The reason US housing prices are where they are today, making buyers unhappy and sellers uncomfortable, fundamentally comes down to supply. In some places, there is panic selling, or people who don't understand real estate buying blindly, perhaps getting played by institutions and ending up with heavy losses. But in other places, there simply aren't enough houses. For example, in the Northeast where approval processes are strict, or the West Coast and Los Angeles area with their various land policies, that is where the inventory imbalance lies. You need to understand the supply structure of your local market to avoid flipping gangs and avoid becoming a bag holder for bad properties. This leads us to the next very practical question. The second highly discussed question this week is, given the economic start to this year, what properties should you absolutely not buy in 2026? At the beginning of last year, we discussed a similar topic about avoiding pitfalls. I warned everyone then to be careful with condos in places like Florida and Texas. The main reason was the high holding costs, high property taxes, high insurance, and high risks of natural disasters. Some cities were even enforcing mandatory building assessments, forcing owners to pay huge lump sums to upgrade structures to meet new codes. That was the warning last year. At the time, I didn't say that condos across the entire US had these problems. But this year, based on current development cycles, many condo communities planned 3 or 4 years ago are due for delivery. They are hitting the market right now. This isn't just limited to Texas or Florida anymore. For example, the Northeast, specifically the Boston area, and I'm giving a little spoiler here for our upcoming Boston special, is facing this. I visited the Boston seaport recently. It's beautiful. There are many ultra high-end condos, and the buildings are stunning. They poured a lot of money into reviving the old harbor district, so they built it to look prestigious. I saw many projects that started development 5 or 6 years ago, pre-selling gradually, and are just now being delivered. Selling them this year is incredibly difficult. Even dropping the price doesn't work. In the past, developers thought, it's New York, it's Boston, there are plenty of rich people, luxury condos will sell easily as safe assets. So they developed aggressively. But now with long-term high interest rates, high HOAs, high total prices, and high holding costs, you might be paying several $1,000s a month just in HOA fees. The math has changed. So to answer the question, if we are talking about the highest risk, given that employment pressure is likely to fluctuate significantly this year, you need to be careful. If you saw something in the first half of the year and bought it thinking you could barely afford it, the economic uncertainty in the second half of the year might mean you can't hold on to it. Everyone needs to pay close attention to employment indicators this year. Once the economy enters an uncertain cycle, the first things to avoid are those properties with high holding costs, high HOAs, and severe oversupply, specifically the local condo market. Many viewers then ask, if I don't dare invest in real estate, should I move my money to AI? It's hot, but I don't follow the industry. How can I quickly understand the AI investment sector? This brings us to the third heated discussion of the week. Real estate is hard to invest in, so people want to pivot to AI. But high tech is volatile, and there is information asymmetry. How can an ordinary person quickly understand the AI industry and know which stocks to buy? People ask me to recommend stocks, which represents a common mistake in investment decision-making. When people talk about investing in high tech, they immediately think about looking at stock tickers. I suggest that beginners first learn to read the structure of an industry. Any industry has an upstream, midstream, and downstream. To understand the whole, you have to look at all three. I'll use my own professional field to throw out an idea. Starting from architecture and extending to the data center projects I mentioned in the last episode. Let's look at the two ends, AI upstream and downstream. The upstream of AI is what you see in the news headlines. Chips, computing power increases, export controls, where Jensen Huang is visiting, etc. The technical barrier is high and the capital density is massive. If you listen to stock commentators on this, you might find that today it's just gossip. A tech stock skyrocketing or crashing often has little to do with your understanding of the actual craftsmanship or technology. Then there is the downstream market, the applications. This includes healthcare, education, finance, content creation, industrial automation, etc. The projects here are numerous and messy, and their return cycles are long. It's not like investing in chips where one piece of gossip makes the stock jump. Just because everything can be AI doesn't mean it makes money immediately. Usually, they have to burn cash for a while first. Finally, let's talk about the midstream. The midstream is the key link connecting the top and bottom. Sometimes, if you say you don't understand high-tech chips, or you can't see how big the scale of an application will effectively be, you can come back and look at the midstream. For example, one industry I mentioned last time is data centers. This falls under industrial real estate. It's not about hyping concepts or painting pretty pictures for stockholders. It is very tangible. When we go on business trips to scout land, the land is right there. Reinforced concrete, power distribution, water supply, cooling, electromechanical equipment, it is all physically placed on site. Whether it's the AI concepts conceived upstream or the applications enjoyed by downstream users, they all have to pass through the midstream through us developing data centers. You can evaluate the project progress by the speed of physical construction. It is a physical building. It seems unrelated to high-tech AI, but AI literally cannot function without it. Otherwise, the applications can't land. So if you are interested in AI investment, but aren't a tech expert and don't make chips, why not look at the midstream? It connects to the upstream. Are the chips actually selling? Is the computing power being absorbed? And it touches the downstream. Can the AI applications actually be deployed? Is the market actually running? Do they need to expand capacity? Of course, the data center projects I discuss are just one link in the AI midstream, simply because it's the industry I work in. I welcome friends from other professions to add to this. The fourth question is one that many young viewers are particularly concerned about. Being young means not having much money. They heard about a magical combination, VTI 60%, VEA 20%, VWO 20%. They want to know, is this combination still universally applicable this year? In any era, young people have this anxiety about getting on board. They are terrified of being left behind by the times. If you bought a house in 2008, you're set for life now. If you missed that, you could have caught the wave in 2020. Let me explain this magical portfolio to those who might not know. VTI is the US total stock market. It's not investing in a single company or betting on a specific industry, but investing in the entire US economic system and its long-term returns. VEA represents developed markets outside the US. For example, early last year I mentioned planning to go to Japan to look at investment projects. I imagine friends who watched that and paid attention to the Japanese market probably made decent returns in the stock market there. Finally, VWO is emerging markets. They have a demographic dividend and stronger growth resilience, but because they are emerging, they are subject to greater economic turbulence. So why did this young friend call it a magical combination? You'll notice it is a model designed to balance investment risks both inside and outside the US. 60% is in the US, and the other 40% is diversified. You could say it prevents you from betting on the wrong treasure or betting against your own era. It gives you a basic floor in any era, a mix with relatively low risk. I don't know how old the viewer asking this is. Let's assume 25 to 30. If you delay by just 5 years, starting at 35 or 40, you might think it's just a few years. But by the time you reach 60, the returns for the person who started at 25 or 30 might be nearly double yours. That is the power of compound interest and fixed investment. That's why I did an episode early last year saying that if young people save a little money, don't rush to buy a house. Learn to dollar cost average first. Cultivate your investment philosophy through regular investing. Even if you aren't doing top-tier AI or data centers, if you just dollar cost averaged into the S&P 500 last year as I suggested, you should have made money. The most important thing I want to say to young people is this. In your first 10 years in society, do not focus on running to the very front of the market. Focus on surviving in the market. Learn to stay at the table. You might allocate 20% of your funds to take risks, to pay your tuition. Losing $10,000 might hurt, but because it's early, you learn how to prevent risk without being knocked out of the game completely. Stay at the table. Additionally, I told young viewers last year that when you first start out, the most important investment is actually investing in yourself. Especially in this AI era, nothing is more important than that. Because once you graduate, what you learned in school is often already obsolete. The era of choosing a college major based on current employment trends is over. This leads to the final question. Parents are anxious. What major should their child choose to have a future? I'm sure many parents can empathize with this. Computer science was one of the hottest majors in our day. Now AI is wiping out the front-end entry-level part of computer science. So parents are anxious. How do we choose a major so my kid gets a good job? I'm going to share my own understanding on that last phrase. It might be subjective and hard to hear, but please trust that I'm speaking the truth. If parents are choosing majors for their kids today based on the logic of graduating to get a good job, that logic is likely wrong. When AI disrupts an industry, is it replacing a replaceable skill or is it impacting a reproducible tool? I think it's the latter. It impacts the tools. If we understand society as a resource cooperation platform for humans, the person operating the computer can be a tool. Therefore, the operator can also be a tool person. If the goal is to become a tool person, there is absolutely no need to study computer science, because when you come out, you will be treated as a reproducible tool. But if you study computer science as a skill to understand and reshape the world, then I believe AI still needs CS professionals to help optimize new AI developments. Even if you don't work in AI, having that underlying logic capability allows you to migrate to any other field without issues. Let me give you my own example. My background is in architecture. To the public, that means building houses and managing projects. But when I started working and transitioned into data centers, I had to learn some programming. At the time, I felt that managing architectural projects and software engineering shared a lot of underlying logic. For example, architecture has structure. We choose a safe, appropriate structure based on climate, geology, client needs, and budget. In software development, you also need architecture. In fact, top-tier developers are called architects. It's the exact same word. One builds physical structures, the other writes code. They seem different, but the understanding of architecture is the same. Conversely, look at the video platform you are watching now. The traffic is massive. Handling that high concurrency requires a software architect to use their brain to manage the flow. In architecture, when we design large airports or safety evacuations for skyscrapers, we also do traffic analysis, optimizing flow lines. So, it's hard to say that my transition from architecture to industrial real estate development was just an accident of life. I feel that within that accident, there was inevitability. The inevitability is that I migrated my underlying logic, not my tools. I believe the original intent of university education is not skills training, on-the-job training, or employment training. Especially for the children of the parents leaving comments, many are very brilliant attending Ivy League schools. Those schools shouldn't be teaching you how to find a job. They should be teaching underlying logic. Forgive me for being blunt, but reflecting on this from the perspective of an AI midstream investor. In modern education and major selection, do not bet on the current employment hotspot. Instead, use the process of elimination to avoid paths that turn you into a tool person who can only do one thing. This is the same logic I mentioned regarding investment. Don't bet on getting rich overnight. Don't bet on a single explosion of wealth. Instead, focus on keeping yourself at the table. When the next industrial shuffle happens, you will still be able to play a very strong opening hand. So regarding these 5 questions this week, I summarized them with one core sentence. In this era of extreme uncertainty, making choices is indeed hard, but the goal is clear: how to stay at the table forever and go a little further. This episode is actually part of a plan I have for this year to create a series of special topics. As more viewers follow this channel, the questions I see every week come from all walks of life. I don't feel these questions are messy or random. I think they perfectly reflect our current moment, the focal points people care about right now. Whether it's life, investment, or development, we are all trying to sketch a relatively true understanding of reality through various channels. So this year, I want to make some improvements to the program and grow personally. I want to discuss things with you based on your comments: real estate, stocks, investment, education, work. This way, the guidance for our real lives might be more meaningful and the practice more grounded. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss the next exciting share.